The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. Long gone are the days of working for the firm and retiring with a watch as a parting gift, says Diana MacKay. The world is careening forward at breakneck speed, she continues. Sometimes we're lucky enough to be holding the reins firmly and riding along, maybe even steering things, but more likely we're just hanging on. In the 1970s, Alvin Toffler and Adele Farrell wrote Future Shock, a book that stated there is too much change in too short a period of time, and that rate of change will accelerate. Accelerated has, says McKay, information overload, social media, and a sense of instability due to rapid change has left people feeling disconnected and disoriented, especially when it comes to their careers. A professional antidote to the speed of change may be to avoid specialization and embrace a generalist approach. Specialists remain essential, but generalists are vital translators, interpreters, and connectors in times of turbulence. And being a generalist can be a lot of fun too. And this may now be the norm for a lot of young people moving through an unpredictable future. I invited Diana MacKay to join me for a conversation that matters about navigating wild career swings and how that diversity of experience actually enables valuable insights about how organizations can and also adapt and leverage change and uncertainty. Diana, welcome.
Thank you, Stu. Great to be with you.
You know, I really was taught when I was in high school, go pick that specialty, and that's going to be the lane that you're going to be in, and go build your career. And it seemed like it was reasonable advice back at the time. Even though I didn't embrace it, it still seemed like it was reasonable advice. Was it reasonable even then? And what's its practicality now?
Well, that's the question I think a lot of young people are grappling with. And my heart goes out to people who are trying to pick a career that they can live with for the next 40 years. It's hard to see what the future looks like for a lot of jobs that were familiar in the old days, but they're just not around anymore, or everything's changing so quickly. So would I advise my kids to gamble on a particular career choice and expect to have it for the rest of their days? No, I wouldn't. And certainly wasn't what I did either, Stu. I was thinking as I was imagining speaking with you today, what I did set out to do when I was a young person. And I look back at my elementary school yearbook, and actually it said that typical of somebody like me, it's A personality and keen on everything. I wanted to be prime minister, it says. And boy, oh boy, I'm glad I didn't go down that road. but I didn't know what I wanted to be. All I knew in my case is that I didn't have a lot of role models around me that made it clear what I should be. So I just sort of began on my path with, keeping all the doors open. And that's been very helpful over the years. And I've walked through a whole heck of a lot of them by choice, and actually most of the time by happenstance.
When I remember when I was in high school, the idea of becoming a computer programmer was first being suggested and introduced. I remember having cards that you would punch the card and you could then do some programming. It held absolutely no interest to me, but it said, there's going to be a need for this, and it's never going to go away because computers will become ubiquitous. And look at how many people followed that career path. Suddenly the world changed. It's called artificial intelligence. And yes, being a coder is a good skill, but it's no longer giving you immunity against financial trade winds.
Yeah, you could see that for so many professions. I mean, everything from truck drivers, they'll be autonomous. Maybe there'll still be somebody that will do some role that's different. It's hard to predict what that's going to be. You name it. I mean, I just rattled off the top of my head without even thinking about it. All the jobs that people do, whether they're reading, tests in the medical world, or whether they're cutting hair, or whether they're teaching. I mean, I work a lot with universities, and the teaching profession is turning upside down, because of AI.
The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. Where do we go? Because if you take a look at what a specialist does, you can say, yeah, but there's always going to be a need for a heart specialist. Like, go and do that. Is that not a good path as you move forward? And I recognize that it's very intense, but that's something that we're going to need. Health issues are always going to be out there. So somebody's looking at it going, okay, Diana, I get what you're saying, lean towards being a generalist, but there's such promise in being a specialist.
Maybe the better way to think about it is, if you are so lucky as to have a passion, pursue it. And pursue it deeply and enjoy every minute of it. I think you can probably think of people in your life that have very clear identified passions, and maybe they start off pursuing it in one way, and over the course of their lives, as they become more and more expert in that area, they display their expertise, or they utilize it in different ways. How lucky for them. But for those people that don't have that clarity of what they want to do or what their passion is, for sure, I'm not going to suggest they don't spend some time at the beach and don't come back from the beach until they know what they want to be. That's also important to do some hard thinking about what it is that would be a good choice if you're going to start down a road. But there's also a lot of merit in not going into a specialized career and just sort of becoming a little bit more fluid and recognizing that that's valuable too. I think a lot of where I'm experiencing over the course of my life anyway is that there hasn't been there's no award out there for being a generalist. There's no celebration of generalism. But
No.
but there's a lot of richness in it. There's a lot of fun in being able to move across all different kinds of things that one does in one's life.
So when one becomes a specialist, of course, the demand to be best in class, and I don't mean just in school, but I mean in the world, the pressures are intense. And so you have to take that into consideration. If I want to be a specialist, I'm going to be expected to perform, and the level of accountability is going to be incredibly high. With that comes stress and quite possibly a loss of enjoyment in life. Listen to me, I sound like a philosopher.
I mean, it's a really interesting conversation. There's also the time that one puts into one's training, and the cost and I don't want to argue against people becoming neurosurgeons by any stretch of the imagination. Let's have some neurosurgeons and great cardiac surgeons. And these are the kinds of jobs that do require undergraduate degrees, graduate degrees, resident training. It all takes a lot of time. And eventually you get the financial reward. Medicine's like that, but there's a lot of other areas of specialization where you could be putting in an awful lot of time getting ready to perform in a role that isn't going to be there, by the time you're ready to take up the profession, or is going to shift a lot. And there could be, therefore, a benefit in working on the job, developing skills that way, as opposed to putting on all those years of training in an educational setting. I should get myself, I should be careful here because I work with universities a lot. And universities are a classic example of an institution and sort of a sector that's needs to undergo transformation precisely because of these issues we're talking about.
Well, I was reading about an interesting approach that happens in the UK, one in England and the other in Scotland. And in England, especially in elite schools, they push their students to pick a specialty early and go for it, to become specialists. In Scotland, they don't have that same pressure, and they say, no, take a more general education and then see what starts to unfold in the course of your career. So then they started to monitor, well, what was the outcome? Well, the specialists, when they graduated from university, initially they had much greater success, and their income was considerably higher. But over time, the results started to switch, with those generalists who remained open and then were able to bring a body of experiences to whatever it was that they were doing, and they saw their economic advantage as being the one that was being realized. It's very interesting.
It is interesting, and it puts us in a difficult position of how to advise young people, therefore, and what they should do. And I think that the message needs to be one of nuance. It's not either or. It's okay to explore and do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and that's the kind of world we're going to be living in. So don't expect that the choices you make today are going to impact you for the rest of your life. Probably not. They're going to impact you for the next 2 to 3 years, and then you're going to make some more choices that are going to be relevant for the rest after that.
The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. Well, you talk about the world in which we live in. In the intro, I talked about the fact that long gone are the days that for 40 some odd years you're going to work for the firm and you're going to get the watch or the gold watch and a nice handshake and say, happy retirement. For so many people, they'll be lucky if they have jobs that with one company last more than 5 years. And so in essence, they're going into a bit of a gig economy. And so then I wonder, okay, do we then really need to be able to say, yeah, be a generalist, like know how to do a whole bunch of stuff and figure out how to pull a bit of this and a bit of that, put it together, and take an entrepreneurial mindset and say, I'm going to apply it to an opportunity or opportunities?
Yes, to some extent. But, I'd even take a step back and say what we probably want to have young people think about, and even older people, for that matter, that are also experiencing change at this rapid pace, is before you start to work on the mechanics of what you're going to do and what you're going to put together with one thing or another, make sure you've got a really strong foundation in resiliency. And I want to shout out a program that I became aware of, I don't know, about a decade ago, run out of Toronto, called Yes Canada. And it's a beautiful program that teaches resiliency by taking young people and putting them in an unfamiliar environment, in their case, overseas for high school. And sure, parents can imagine their kids are going to go off and get the experience abroad and education experience abroad, and those, that's sort of familiar and valuable. But the program's purpose is to provide young people with confidence that they can go into an unfamiliar setting, live with a family they are going to have to put up with or enjoy or what have you. It's different than their own home family. And the people that participate in the program go to the local public school, so it's not an expensive program at all. In fact, it's relatively cheap. You can calculate how much it costs to keep your kid at home, and you can compare that to how much it costs to send them abroad to live with a family and go to a public school. It's not that big of a difference. But the program I really admire because it does provide young people with an experiential learning that results in, yes, I can go through difficult situations, and I'm learning this at a young age. So I'll carry this with me for the rest of my life. And when I encounter circumstances down the road where I'm all again suddenly in an unfamiliar situation, like a job loss or like a change in family circumstances or what have you, you've got that background of knowing you can get through something difficult, and you draw on that, confidence and resiliency to then start to put the pieces together. Like you say, what am I going to do? Who do I need to talk to? What do I need to, what are the steps I need to take to make a change in my life or to navigate through this difficult circumstance? And that's the piece that I think is probably the foundational piece that we don't pause long enough to think about. If you've got that, you're going to be a lot better off than if you're, applying sort of knee-jerk reactions to change and just trying to fuddle your way through it.
So Diana, as you say that, I think you're talking about an approach that's almost antithetical to what has been so much of a parenting model, at least in North America, over the last 20 some odd years, which is, no, we need to give our children those supportive environments that encourage them to embrace how unique they are and how they can, flourish by not having to go through those struggles that we've actually, well, there's one fellow that I interviewed, he wrote a book called Hacking the American Mind. And he basically said we mollycoddled children and protected them from the realities of life. And you're saying, nope, go out there, get a few bumps and bruises, and toughen
Absolutely.
up.
Yeah, that's absolutely what I'm saying. And I couldn't believe it more strongly. I think we've become far too careful with our kids, for good reason, mind you. There's a lot of more crazy things happening in the world, and we all want to protect kids from them. But look at how hard it is to do that. So yeah, I'm in the camp of sink or swim. Throw out there, you'll learn how to do it, and you'll be a better adult for it. You'll be better able to navigate the difficulties in the future.
Now, I can never get this author's name right, but he wrote the book Anti-Fragile. And he said, anti-fragility is not just resilience, it's way beyond resilience. It's you take these bumps and bangs and bruises and whatnot, and they don't break you down, they actually make you stronger. And he used the metaphor of a samurai sword. The more times it's struck by the sword maker, the harder the steel becomes. And in many ways, that is so core to who we are as people. If you go, okay, like that's the best shot you got, like I can deal with that, no problem. Then you can find your way through so many challenges. But let's come back to sort of the education component about this, though. You still have to have a basic understanding of how things work. And so it's not like you say, okay, I'm going to set aside a desire to be a specialist, but I still need to learn how things work.
Yeah, there's a nuance there too, though. As a person who has found myself in astounding situations where I did not predict I was going to be doing that for work. I did not have the knowledge of how to do it, honestly, in several occasions. And you have to be able to figure it out. That's the challenge. You have to be able to figure it out and be comfortable in, expressing out loud that you might not know the answer right away. That's another part of our current culture, I think, that is maybe a little bit off, healthy, we can't always think we know the answer. And so be comfortable in tackling problems that seem insurmountable and you just don't know how to do them, but you'll figure it out. If you have confidence you can figure it out, then that's half the battle.
What you say there, the liberating effect of being able to answer a question by going, I don't know. Let's find out. It is liberating, but it takes a certain amount, as you point out, of self-confidence to be able to stand up and admit that, but then go and do the work. And I think that's what's so amazing.
If we could pivot to where Canada is on these kinds of issues, we're talking about individuals, but I'd also like to say a word about sort of where we are in Canada on our nationhood ability to do these things. I get frustrated when I think about where Canada currently is in the global standings, and it's kind of like a replica of this whole conversation. Canada's needing to take on and demonstrate these same sort of capabilities, this resilience, this ability to tackle things that you don't expect you're going to have to tackle, and to do it. And I wish all our workforce, in effect, would be game on for some of these kinds of challenges. Game on. We don't know how we're going to protect our North, but we can do it. And game on for, we don't know how we're going to diversify our trade, and game on, we don't know how we're going to, whatever it be, protect our waters or protect our environment. But if we had a culture in our communities and in our families and in our education system of this, sort of hard knocks, school of hard knocks, then I think we'd be tackling some of these problems a little bit more adroitly. And in fact, we're not. We're sort of expecting somehow some specialists are going to show up, and solve all these problems, and they do. But but it's not enough to have that. We need the whole of society to embrace and grapple with the changes we're all facing and think it through. And that, I think, would be some of the magic sauce that Canada could use very effectively right now to prevent us from slipping a little bit further down from the A cohort of countries into the B cohort of countries. And that's sort of what I see happening.
The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. What would you like, especially younger families, to talk about at the Christmas table about, okay, how are we going to move forward collectively and how are you going to move forward individually? Like, what would be a good conversation starter for them from your perspective?
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I mean, how many generations are at the table, Stu?
Three.
Three generations. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, three generations. That would be a good start. I'll bet not many families are going to have three generations around the table. That's problem number one.
Okay.
Yeah. So one of my wishes would be to have three generations around that table and a very deliberate listening exercise where each member of the family is invited to express some opinions, and people stop and really listen and let them have the time they need to formulate their ideas and to express them. That goes for people who are in their elderly years and maybe having a harder time competing at the busy dinner table to get a word in, and to the young ones that are told to hush up, the adults are talking. So that's probably not the answer to the question you're looking for, but that's the first step, I think.
I think about my youngest daughter when she was like sort of exiting elementary school, going into secondary school. Of course, the question is, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? And she went, I don't know. I like being a child right now, and I'm going to enjoy this as much as possible. And when I get to that next stage, then I'm going to throw myself into it with the same amount of enthusiasm that I have now. Well, I watch her now as a young woman in the workforce. She has grown up, she's become a young adult, and she throws herself into the challenge that she has right now with that same kind of vigor. And she just learns as she goes. And this sort of kind of comes full circle to the point that we're trying to make. That's what you want to do. Become immersed in the moment, be open to change, and then throw yourself into it.
But what about all those folks that are terribly frightened by what's happening, the pace of change? They don't know how to make decisions about what they're going to do, whether they're an emerging, adult who's looking for the first job, or whether they're mid-career and needing to make a change by choice or by circumstance, or they're looking at, maybe they thought they were going to retire, but they can't, and they have to reformulate themselves and find some new employment. And these are really difficult things to do for a lot of people. And I think they probably need some guidance and some support and some encouragement and messaging from society and from their families that it's okay. It's going to take some time. It does take time to make change. It takes sometimes years to make change and to be effective in that process. So hang in there. It'll come along. Be patient.
So a couple things to the question that you posed and partially answered is I also go thinking about, well, having the confidence to say I don't know is one, but I can find the answer. And the other element, and it's something that I've learned over the years as I've had to toughen up from the body blows of running a small business in a service sector that nobody actually needs. Something doesn't work out or it's a setback. My response now is, well, you never know when you're having good luck. And the reason that I say that is that because that moment didn't work out, I'm now forced to look at something else that I wouldn't have otherwise because this was working out. And it can open up doors to opportunities, but it's about having confidence that can happen. How do we share that message? And I think
model that where it does happen, just show that it does happen, examples of where it happens. And the easiest place to see that at least in my world, is when people move from one place to another. That happens frequently enough. We can see people who are moving physically. In my case, I moved a couple times from one country to another, and that's a big change. People move from one community to another community. It's a big change from one job to another job. And inevitably things work out, inevitably things will work out, but there's that process of settling in again and discovery again and introducing oneself again and proving oneself again and all that kind of stuff. And that's fine. That's the way the world is.
Yeah, it's interesting saying, do you be a specialist or a generalist? As a specialist, you have more certainty. With a generalist, there's more uncertainty, but I think that you learn much more about yourself and what you're capable of.
Yeah, in my case, I had really, as you said in your intro, some pretty wild swings from, business world and to the development world to academia and journalism. And so I've been all around, and I think every time, fortunately, I'm one of the ones that I have the confidence that I can kind of make it work. But I think for a lot of people that would be a bridge too far, to move from one career to a completely different career. But it's so rewarding when you do it, and you can do it, and it just takes a little bit of chutzpah, really.
Well, and that's why it's important that we talk about this. We're out of time. Thank you very much for this interview. I think it's a great Christmas message to have for families, so thank you.
Thank you, Stu, as always.